1332 BC, 2563 AM. The restoration stela of King Tutankhamun at Karnak describes Egypt during the time of his predecessor Akhenaten. Quote, "The temples of the gods and goddesses from Aswan to the delta swamps had fallen into ruin. Their sanctuaries were decayed, become as heaps of rubble, overgrown with weeds. Their shrines were like what does not exist. Their mansions were a footpath. The land was in calamity, and the gods turned away from this land. If an army was sent to Jahi, Palestine, to extend the borders of Egypt, no success could happen for them." Unquote. This lamentation describes Egypt's total ruin from the 10 plagues disasters in 1447 BC. The heretic king Akhenaten was later blamed after the fact of his rule for this earlier devastation, as Egyptian chroniclers focused on him rather than Israel and the Exodus event. This reference to Palestine is revealing, for Egypt was surrounded by enemies and places they could extend their territory. Here we have an inadvertent admission that in Palestine was a people who did not allow Egypt to extend their borders. This is evident in the Canaanite Amarna documents and the fact that Nubia, Libya and Syria all quit providing Egypt tribute. This ancient Egyptian text is dated exactly 680 years after Ham, Khem Anam Mena Menes, began his rule after the flood in 2012 BC, 680 years being 244,800 days, 2448. This paralleling the year 2448, 1447 BC, when Egypt was ruined. 1. History and quotations. 1317 BC, 2578 AM. King Eglon of Moab organised an alliance between Moab and Ammon against Israel. They are joined in the alliance by the Amalekites. At the death of the judge Othniel, the allied armies invade Israel, forcing them to pay tribute for 18 years. This is 48 years, 576 months, golden proportion number, after the Hittite dynasty of Babylon invaded Israel in 1365 BC. This being the second time Israel as a nation was attacked. This year was 630 years, 70 times 9 after Abraham was born. The patriarch of Israel and kin to Lot, who was patriarch of Moab and Ammon. This was also 560 years, 70 times 8 after the Abrahamic covenant was instituted, and 490 years, 70 times 7 after it was confirmed in 1807 BC. As this was the 90th year that Israel was a nation, this is 1080 months. 1. Judges. 1300 BC, 2595 AM. This is an approximate date for when Chinese astronomers recorded the appearance of a new star. 1299 BC, 2596 AM. A left-handed Benjamite of Israel named Ehud entered the Moabite court of King Eglon, who was extraordinarily fat. Ehud pretended to have a secret message for the king, who then dismissed his guards to the outer hall. Leaning toward him, Ehud withdrew a dagger and buried it in between King Eglon's fat folds, killing him. Exiting the hall, the guards were deterred from re-entering the chamber. After Ehud told them the king was sleeping, Ehud made his escape after assassinating the king of Moab, delivering Israel after 18 years of Moabite oppression. This was a great year after the Babel dispersion in 1899 BC, or 600 years. This was 148 years, or 1776 months, after Israel escaped Egypt, and this was the 108th year of Israel. 1297 BC, 2598 AM. Because the Israelites failed to fulfill their obligation to overrun all of Canaan, there were still many cities of the Canaanites. In this year, a combined army under Sisera forced Israel to pay tribute for 20 years. This Canaanite oppression was 490 years, 70 by 7, after the birth of Jacob. This was the third time Israel was invaded and defeated since becoming a nation, exactly 68 years after the first invasion by the Hittite-controlled Babylonians. 68 years is 24,480 days, 2448. This Canaanite invasion was 552 years before the Assyrians would invade in 745 BC and deport the 10 tribes of Israel. The Canaanite invasion raises an important point. Israel had just conquered Canaan, and Bashan, 110 years earlier, and in that time they no doubt multiplied in numbers. That the Canaanites raised armies and in turn overpowered Israel reveals that the Israelite population had stagnated because of a continual decrease in numbers. As we will see, the Israelites were migrating in groups throughout the Mediterranean, the Aegean Isles and coast of Asia Minor and the Peloponnese. Israel was growing so rapidly the land could not sustain them. 1290 BC, 2605 AM. This is the final year of Pharaoh Seti II reigning alone, for in this year he begins the co-rulership with his son, who assumes the title Ramesses II, who oppressed the Israelites. By this time Seti I had subdued Phoenicia, which at this time was brimming with Israelites. The Egyptian presence would have instigated a new wave of immigration from the coast of Phoenicia and Israel to Crete and the Aegean. In an inscription of Seti I and Ramesses II, we discover references to Asher in Palestine, one of the Israelite tribes. Emanuel Velikovsky exhibits Egyptian texts that reveal that Palestine was occupied by a white North Semitic population. The emergence of the boy pharaoh Ramesses II initiated a 19-year-long war with the Hittites of Anatolia. 1 Phoenicians, 2 Ages in Chaos, Volume 1. 1279 BC, 2616 AM. It is unknown what occurred in this year, but the calendrics are incredible. The major numbers are all Anunnaki related. 792 by 5 of Anunnaki chronology, 3960. 552 times 5 orbital chronology, 2760, when Anunnaki aided in restoration of Earth and created mankind in 4039 BC. This was 2160 years, 432 times 5, since the Anunnaki descended to Earth at Passover of Nibiru in 3439 BC. It is futile to speculate beyond this. 1277 BC, 2618 AM. The Israelites, led by the woman Deborah and warrior Barak, battled the Canaanite army of Sisera after 20 years of paying tribute. At the sight of the enormous Canaanite army with their iron chariots, the Israelites nearly fled had not the prophetess Deborah intervened. Josephus relates that a strange storm of mighty winds, hailstones and rain went hard against the Canaanites, but aided the Israelites in battle. Believing God assisted them, the Israelites routed the Canaanites, and Sisera escaped to a Kenite woman's tent. While he slept, she ran a tent nail through his head, killing him, fulfilling the prophecy that Sisera would be killed by a woman. This ended the 20 years of tribute. This was 670 years after the birth of Abraham in 1947 BC, and 622 after the Babel dispersion, 622 being half of 1244, a number serving as a signature of Israel throughout history. It is half of 2488, the Annus Mundi year when Israel conquered Canaan in 1407 BC. 1 Judges, 2 Antiquities.